Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Budget Control Act passed in 2011. It held the sequestration provisions in it that have done such damage to national defense. For emphasis, I'm one of those that heeded the warnings and voted against the Budget Control Act. We were advised, the House Armed Services Committee in 2011, that if sequestration played out through the full 10-year period after everything was said and done, our military would have the smallest number of men and women in uniform since before World War II, Great Depression era numbers, the smallest number of operational naval vessels since roughly World War I, and the smallest number of operational aircraft in the history of the United States Air Force. That's 3.5 years ago. Today, do you have a judgment as to whether those projections are holding up, or they were exaggerations or underestimates?
My first reaction is actually I think we're getting there even faster than some would have guessed at that time. You know, I think we already had a Navy and an Air Force that were shrinking as budgets were growing. I believe the Air Force is now trying to rebound from hitting their lowest point since their creation in after World War II. This year, the Navy force structure that we have projected, even at the President's budget level, not even the BCA level, is bringing us far below where we have traditionally been as a Navy, and it's both the size and efficacy of those forces. We've shrunk them. They also have the oldest equipment that they've had, especially in the Air Force, as sort of an average age of inventory, and they are getting less time to fly, steam, drive, and train and exercise. So I think we've already seen a lot of those impacts probably faster than we would have expected.
If I could add one thing, I fully agree. We are rapidly shrinking the force. I think faster than many of us even expected. I think even when we were running this exercise, I think we thought that our cuts might have been too rapid, and yet it seems to be the track that we're on. The one thing, a caution I would offer is while, you know, for many types of threats and many types of contingencies, the size and the capacity of the force matters and the number of platforms matters. And other contingencies, other situations, it's the capabilities that those platforms have that actually may be more important. So while we do see that our ship count in the Navy, just if you take an example, is far below where it was in the 1980s, it's a different mix of ships with different capabilities. The same is true of the Air Force, much smaller number of platforms, but I would argue that the platforms are a lot more capable. So it's a very complicated question when you're looking at the size and capacity of the force. You have to also take into account what are the capabilities of that force, what can it actually do? And that, I think that's a key role of this committee, is providing oversight to make sure that we've got the right set and the right mix of capabilities and capacity in the future.
Is it fair to say at the same time that our potential geopolitical foes' platforms or weapon systems are also being upgraded?
Or just changed? The other thing that I would say about our forces is they're really remarkably less ready. So it's not just a question of how capable they are, how many of them there are, but how many of them are prepared to go into harm's way on short notice. The chiefs recently testified that because of the little squirt of money they got in the Ryan Murray deal, the Air Force got up to 50% of its combat fleet being ready. The Chief of Staff of the Army reported a third of its brigade combat teams were ready. That was the high water mark of recent years. So if you ask how many units can we send to respond to a crisis who have all their gear, well-trained, all their people, and are ready to go, that's a small slice of a shrinking pie, an aging, pie with aging equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're looking at outputs rather than inputs, I think that's the sort of metrics that really frighten me much more, either than capacity or capability.
China has had double-digit increases in its defense spending for 24 of the last 25 years. That's a situation that we can't imagine sitting in this room for ourselves. And over time, just looking at those trajectories, this just presents a far greater problem for us as we look out a decade or more.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.